Let's bring Scott and Lanette to the stage.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, friends.
It's the almost lunchtime crowd, right? Everybody hungry? Falling asleep? Okay, I'll
You
start.
can do 10
talking.
jumping jacks if you want. Ready, go. No, just kidding.
We're doing stories first,
Yeah,
how we got
go for it.
started? Go for it.
So I'm Lanette Fidrych, and I started Cycle Dog, Earth-Friendly Pet Company, in 2009. And I, like many people in the small business industry, I worked at Nike. I quit my job in 2009, and I started a mission-based business where I wanted to start a business that I could feel really good about it. I was a bike commuter and a cyclist, I still am, and I found that inner tube rubber was something that was constantly being disposed of, and there wasn't a way to recycle it. So I started making dog collars and leashes out of it, and pretty shortly thereafter, a lot of people wanted it, and I started a business with that concept of upcycling different materials into really great product for dogs. Fast forward now, coming on 8 years. We now offer a full line of earth-friendly pet products. We use a lot of different materials that we recycle. And one of the cool things is every time we come out with a new product, it's all about back to that mission of, is it upcycled? What's the earth-friendly component of it? And is it something that we can really get behind?
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
My name's Scott Hamlin. I'm the CEO of Looptworks, and I founded Looptworks in a similar but slightly different fashion in that I came at it from the corporate side of things. I worked on the other side of the river at Adidas, and then worked in the outdoor industry for a company called Royal Robbins, and was starting to try and get that brand to anchor itself more in a sustainable mission. And during that process, saw all the waste that was coming out of the manufacturing process. And I was the guy that was writing the checks for all of our excess fabric liability. And it would be 5,000 yards of this and 50 yards of that. And oops, we had a 15,000 yards of this. And it would come every 6 months. I'd get all these invoices. And I was like, if we're doing this, everybody else is doing this. And if we're all doing this, we have a huge problem. And so I started to look at it from that standpoint. And I said, this is an industry issue that is not only a huge environmental concern, but it's also scalable because of the amount of, the industry stat is somewhere between 17 and 30% of all materials that go into production get left over in manufacturing. And when they get left over, there's kind of a few options, and none of them are good, but landfill incineration back into the factory as falsified goods, or bundled up and shipped off to third world countries and kind of wiping out local textile industry. So that was the impetus for starting Looptworks. And then fast forwarding on that, we have started to take on brand partners in the process of doing this, where not only were we working with factories and mills, but then we had brands that were coming to us looking for sustainable options on their waste streams and how they could stop their waste from going into these avenues. And in that process, Southwest Airlines came to us on a post-consumer side of things, where they had 80,000 leather seats. It was about 43 acres worth of leather from renovating their entire fleet of planes. And we set up a reverse logistics supply chain here in Oregon, where we bring those seats in. We partner, we are mission-based, but we're also a certified B Corp. We then take those materials, work with 2 nonprofits that employ adults with disabilities. We help them deconstruct them, teach them how to do the deconstruction and rehabilitation, and then we create products out of them and commercialize those products. And in doing so, started landing a bunch of other brand partners along the way, and our business has been not only mission-based, but scalable as well to come out of that.
So some of the questions just in conversations that have come up around can you scale a mission-based business? And a lot of perception around mission-based businesses is they tend to be a hobby or something that you just, oh, that's really nice that you can go and do that. You know, that's really nice, Scott. And oftentimes you kind of get this perception that that's not something that can go mainstream, and it's not something that has a lot of business opportunity to it. And I'm sure that Scott can attest to the fact that right now customers really want something that has a story. They want something that has a mission. They can buy a bag from anybody, but if they can buy a bag that has a solid story like Looptworks bags, or it has a solid story like, you know, like our product, then you now have something that transcends the product, and you have somebody that wants to get on board with what it is your mission is. And we find it with a lot of our customers, they're excited about our brand, not because of our product, but because of what we do and the story behind our product and the different, you know, that kind of closing the loop between the outdoor community and bike shops and that waste material, and then turning it into something that is really fun, interactive with the dog, and not only a fun upcycled product, but a performance product at the same time. And rubber happens to be really great for dogs because it doesn't absorb any water, odor, you know, things like that. So you have this really good odor-free collar. We added a bottle opener to it because why not? and before you know it, you have this really fun product that people are excited to buy, and they're excited to get behind, and they're excited to see what you're going to come up with next because they're behind your mission. And that's what makes it scalable and allows you to sell in a variety of markets that really transcend what, you know, for us, we could say, well, we're a pet product. We sell in pet stores. But to be honest, we sell in brewery because we have a bottle opener. We sell in green shops because they want recycled product. We sell in the outdoor market because outdoor people love their dogs. We sell in farm and ranch because farmers have dogs. We sell in hardware because some communities, that's where you go buy your pet products. So for us, the scalability in pet is huge because so many people have pets. It's a growing market, and it's not just about, you know, going into boutique pet stores. It's, you know, where is your customer out there buying, and, you know, how can you best serve them? And then at the end of the day, how do you get your story out to them so that they want to get behind what you're selling and your mission behind the product that you make?
It's awesome. I think on the mission-based side of things, on a personal note, for me, it was, I'd had a fairly long career creating things and product creation and innovation and working for these large brands. And once I kind of lifted the lid or looked behind the curtain on what was going on, it was kind of an ethical question for me personally, where I had to look myself in the mirror. And I, at that point, had 2 little kids. And I had to ask myself the question, what kind of world did I want to leave for my children or their children? And knowing all the things that were happening, it looked to me like I needed to make a decision that would be something that not only my kids would be proud of, but I could be proud of as well. And so there was that inherent ethical issue around it, but then you have to put on your pragmatic business hat really quickly. I have a great advisor who says, no margin, no mission. So if you're not making money at it, it doesn't really matter. And so the scalability, not only from a standpoint of it being a larger thing if you're taking on investors and having to pay out exits and that sort of thing, but also the just the growth of your business and the health of your business. It can be a very healthy business, and it doesn't have to be huge. And it can provide for you, your family, your employees, and a lot of things. So understanding where you want to go with that business and what that looks like, I think, is a really important piece of it for how you're going to run an ethical business. In our particular case, the size of the problem was just so huge and so massive that we had to try and look at it from a larger scope as far as how do we deal with this, and then bringing on brand partners like Patagonia and Southwest and Boeing and Alaska and all the companies that we work with now. That's an important piece of the puzzle, so that we get an amplification of our message through brands that have much bigger, louder voices than we do.
I like it. So when Scott and I were talking about our chat, one thing that was important to us was having a lot of crowd interaction. And so we kind of wanted to find out, what do you guys want to know about mission-based businesses, or you know, what thoughts do you have, and what questions do you have that maybe we could help with?
How
That's a great question. So his question was, how do you convey your mission? Like, how do you tell that story, right? Right. So what's the means of communication? So for us, there's all the standard ones, through social media marketing, using it in all of your just regular marketing materials. But one thing that I've been training a new sales team this, over the last year, and one thing that's been really interesting is that every customer you speak to and every opportunity you have to go out and sell, the first thing we do is tell our story. And that is one thing that we don't go out and say, hey, this is this really great dog collar, look at all these features it has, look at all the benefits that it offers you. We say, we're Cycle Dog, we upcycle materials. There's over 1 million bike tubes made every single year, and we reclaim those tubes and we turn them into really great products for your dogs. And not only that, we hand make them in the US, we have a factory in Portland, we employ underprivileged people, we retrain people in sewing, and by purchasing this product, you're supporting all of those things. And that's our sales pitch every single time, and these are the products we sell. And every time we have somebody that comes into our showroom over in Northwest Portland, we immediately ask them, have you heard of our brand before? Oh, no, I haven't. Well, this is actually our factory. We hand make everything here. We use reclaimed material and everything we offer. So every opportunity we get, we're telling that story. And what happens is when you get somebody that's passionate about your story and passionate about what you're doing, and that always permeates all of your communication, they tell their buddies, they tell their friends, they buy the dog collar, and then they go home and they're at a barbecue and they open a beer with their dog collar and they say, oh, this is this really cool dog collar, but not only that, it's this really cool company makes it, and they regurgitate that story. And so for us, a lot of it is word of mouth and a lot of it's social media, and you go through it by telling your story every opportunity you get, because what you're selling is your mission, and you're selling what it is you're about, and you're wanting those people to buy into that and in turn then buy your product.
That was awesome, wasn't it? From Lanette hit on two things that were super critical in my opinion, just the storytelling piece of it. I'll kind of generalize this from a brand perspective for all the different types of consumer products, there's not going to be too many gadgets, gizmos, widgets, whatever it is that you guys create from a beverage, anything that there isn't already one, or others, or multiples. So then what sets your brand apart is the story of your brand. And you have to constantly and always be telling your brand story. For us, we were really lucky with that, and our mechanism for telling the story was PR. We very shortly after launching ended up getting a lot of PR from me being asked to speak with Al Gore on a panel on pioneers in sustainable capitalism, to Oprah's O-List, to the Today Show. So we had a lot of PR that happened really quickly. And then we kept riding that momentum again, and when we had our, for example, our partnership with Southwest Airlines, we generated 3 billion media impressions out of that campaign. And that was Looptworks doing that, not Southwest, because Southwest kind of didn't want anything to do with it. And until we generated 3 billion media impressions, and then all of a sudden they thought we were really cool. So it was one of those things that, they had gone out and they tried to tell this story. And first of all, they went and shot this great film, and they donated some leather to some folks in Kenya, and went down there and shot this beautiful film that was 3.5 minutes long about telling this story of how they donated the leather to a nonprofit in Kenya. And there was 2 media hits on it, and they were both online, and that was it. And the reason is that it kind of looked like this. They were patting themselves on the back. And in our case, we came in as little old Looptworks, and we had to kind of complete the story. And first of all, you had to give them something tangible, the audience, something tangible to engage in. You couldn't buy this product in Kenya. There was no engagement point for that. And it was a nice story, but it was kind of like, oh, that's nice. When we brought it home and really told the whole story and showed the people who were doing the deconstruction and showed the process and got that out to people, we ended up with, we were on NBC Nightly News for 2.5 minutes all across every channel, and it shut down our website in every time zone, and it was a massive, massive commercial success from that standpoint. But it it was us being the buffer brand and telling the story ourselves from the viewpoint of actually doing it, as opposed to, look what we had done. So I think perspective on your storytelling is really important, and just being honest and just show people what you're doing.
Yeah, and I would say that when you have a really cool mission like that and you're actually going out there, like, people love to talk about that stuff. They love to talk about feel-good stories, and you'd be surprised like how much media will come to you because they want to tell your story for you because they heard about it. Like, a couple of years ago, we had this guy just call us up from CNN, and he's like, oh, you know, I'm going to be in town, and I'm doing a couple of features on, you know, small businesses, and I can't remember even what it was called. And I was like, oh, okay, well, what does that cost? Because they call you all the time, and they'd like you to pay them a lot of money to do that. And he was like, oh, no, it doesn't cost anything, but I just want to schedule it, and, you know, it's just something we do for the news. And I was just kind of, well, how did you hear about it? Well, I was just looking at green businesses in Portland, and there's so many of them, but I have a dog and I really like what you do. And he came and did this like 2-minute film, and it's been shown, I think, like 6 or 7 times on HLN, on CNN, it was on their website, and they redo it all the time. But you'd be surprised, like, when you have a really good story and you have something that people want to talk about, you'd be surprised how often the media comes to you and people start to share your story for you. And there have been times, I think our second year in business, we woke up after just a super late night of like producing all this product. And the phone is just ringing off the hook, and the emails, we're just getting blown up. And I'm just like, what is going on? And we were like on the Today Show, but we didn't know that they had like, you know, they were talking about our product on the Today Show because like the lady from Animal Planet happened to buy it. She really liked it, and she was doing this feature on the Today Show, and then it just like popped up, and it's same thing, like totally shut everything down. We had no idea. And it was so funny, but when you have a really cool story, people will tell it for you. And if you're always telling it, and you're telling it from the perspective of, we do this because we find value in it, and it's important, and doing things for the earth are important, and it's never the easy route, and I'm sure Scott can attest to that. Like, it's never easy using an upcycled product. It would be so much easier for me any day of the week to go out and source raw rubber on a roll. It would be so much easier and so much cheaper, but that's not what I'm in business for. I'm in business because I saw a problem that there was over 1 million tubes being sent to the landfill every single year and being burned, and it was horrible. And to me, it was a great material. We might as well try to use it. And, you know, and every day I had a guy on the phone yesterday calling every single bike shop in Portland and Oregon and Washington, trying to get more people on board to recycle tubes with us, because one of the important things for us is, as we scale, we need to continue to come back on that mission and make sure we're still, you know, sticking to our roots and using post-consumer recycled materials. So that means, you know, constantly gaining more materials, making sure you're increasing your sourcing there. So that's an important part of scaling, but it all comes down to telling the story.
Yeah, and supply chain is a complicated.
Oh, it's so complicated.
But the one caveat on the storytelling piece of it, and I'm sure you'll see this as well, is we have to operate on the mindset that people act like people, and they walk into wherever they walk into, and they go, oh, that's a nice bag or accessory or jacket or whatever it is. It's the right color, it's the right fit, it's the right price, it does what I need it to do, and they make the list of things on their purchasing decision. Mm-hmm. And then they draw a total line and say, I'm gonna buy that. And then they find out, oh yeah, that was upcycled from excess materials, and they're like, oh, that's cool, that makes me feel good too, but it wasn't in their purchasing decision. Mm-hmm. That's really, really important to understand.
Really important.
However, when that person walks out the door and somebody says, hey, that's a great jacket or a great dog collar or a great bag, that's the first thing they tell them. Did you know it was upcycled from excess bike tubes, and it's made by this really cool company? And then they tell your story for you. So that's the really important piece of it. You're not going to get your first customer off the story alone. You still have to nail your product, nail your price points, nail your functions, all of those things you still have to do.
Yep. Yeah, it has to be a great product. I mean, people come into our store and they have no idea that there's anything special about it until they actually start to engage with it and use it. And if they aren't interested in buying it right off the shelf without the story, then they won't, no matter what your story is.
Other questions?
Where do we donate locally so they can hire tubes?
Tubes, you can donate them to any of the bike shops that we collect from, and we also accept tubes every day on 22nd and Quimby. at our showroom. So you can drop them off anytime. Anybody else? Yeah.
Scott, do you feel like after doing this for 4 or 5 years, I don't know how long it's been going,
7.
7 years, do you feel like you've made an impact and some change in the industry?
Yeah, it's, I actually do. I'll give you just, with Southwest, the funny story on that one, I keep coming back to them because that was a recent one, but they didn't have, that's a what, 19, $20 billion company, whatever they are. They didn't have anybody in their corporate structure with a title of corporate social responsibility or sustainability on staff, period. Didn't have anybody. They had a couple of community relations folks. When we started the program with them, the community relations person kind of got excited about it and it was very cute, she put an upcycling box in front of her desk. So anybody in the company who had materials could bring them by, drop them in the box, and she would ship them to us and say, hey, can you do anything with this? And that was their entire sustainability platform for this multi-billion-dollar company. So we then took them, we all of a sudden they jumped on board with things because they're like, whoa, these guys are actually making some waves here. And so we took them to a few sustainability conferences and had them on panels, and they spoke with us and told the story. And after 3 of those, they put a job rec out for a vice president of sustainability, and they actually hired that person in about 3 months ago. So that's little old Looptworks having this big impact on an airline, which honestly, when we started this, I thought it would be on the apparel, on the athletic and outdoor side of things. But we also have brand partners like Timberland, like Brooks, like Patagonia, like Specialized Bikes, all these other brand partners that are now starting to act differently. Arc'teryx called us yesterday, and I had a meeting this morning with Nike, and we did a pilot project with the Portland Trail Blazers last year. Did anybody see that?
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Thank you.
I saw it.
I will secretly, quietly announce to you guys, because we're going to do a bigger splash on this later, but we just signed a multi-year deal with the entire NBA to do a similar program.
Cool.
So when you have audiences like that, like the MBAs and some of these other guys that wouldn't be a typical audience for a sustainability initiative, working with us and starting to get plugged in, that's where it gets really exciting and where you start to see the shifts in the industry. There's a lot more work to do, but at least people are plugging in.
Other questions? That's a good question. I would say when I started, I kind of looked at it from more like an 18-month perspective, and I kind of wrote out like, what do I want to do in the next 18 months? What is it going to look like? What retailers do I want to work with? How big do I want to go? And I actually still do that now. Every 18 months, I rewrite my goals and plan for the next 18 months and put together strategies and deliverables for that. And then what's really cool is at the end of that 18 months, I go back and I look at what I set out to do, and I actually make all the notes on this is what we accomplished, this is what we didn't accomplish. We did okay here, we could do a lot more work here, and then I reset those goals for the next 18 months. And I think with any business, not even just a mission-based business, but you have to have a roadmap of some sort. You have to have a plan. And without a plan, you're just kind of winging it. And it's difficult to say like, oh, this is my 10-year plan, because like a lot can change in 10 years. And even like a 5-year plan, you can kind of have your long-term out there like, well, in 5 years, I'd like to be here. I'd like to do this. But really, for me, 18 months is a good like digestible thing, because I feel like it's enough time to set out and accomplish some things. But it's also not so much time that you get overwhelmed, if that makes sense. So for me, I set up 18 months and write it all out and set a strategy and assign who's gonna get after it. And then the important part of that is then checking in on those goals every month. So at the end of every month, we meet and we say, okay, how are we tracking against these goals? Where are we?
We had a 12-month window for our first kind of, let's see what, you and I started about the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd say the word upcycling and people thought you were riding your bike up a hill. There was no real basic knowledge of what was going on. Yeah. So there was a huge education component to this. And also we needed to test the waters to see is there an interest on this? Do people really even care? And so we had kind of a 12-month plan, but we didn't raise money out of the gate, and we probably didn't raise money for about the first 2 years. And then we started raising money, and then all of a sudden you have to look at your plans a little bit differently because investors want to see what the pie in the sky is. And I had a real hard time with that initially because I don't like to paint pictures that aren't real. And the whole concept of being able to forecast a best case scenario so that people can see the scalability and the value, especially in the types of businesses that we're dealing with. You need to project a little bit more out, but for us, you don't know what's going to happen after 18 months, and 18 months is a super solid number to say this. I'm gonna plan that far out. Oh, 1 minute.
Oh,
1
yeah.
minute. Last question.
Last question.
Yeah, I was wondering, in your earlier stages, I guess it sounds like you're reaching some pretty awesome scale now, but how much did your product offerings have to change given the material you had on hand? Like, were you, it sounds like when you started really massive with a 5-letter, were other materials coming in that massive amount, you didn't worry about running out of something after you created the product? Did it impact as the fact that like you're selling by the dishes?
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that people don't really understand, and we had a lot of hard times, and Lanette might be able to touch on this better, because when we first tried to talk to retailers, they're like, well, it's always going to change. How do I know? I can't anniversary this item. And what they didn't realize was the scope of the problem and the amount of waste that was out there. We could probably run through multiple seasons before we would have to make material changes. And trying to get people to understand that was pretty difficult. But
Yeah, and for us, we started with collars and leashes, and I went out in the marketplace because I thought collars and leashes were just a great product. Well, then I learned that I made such a great product that they lasted for years. And so nobody, if once they bought one, they didn't need another one anytime soon. So then I learned, well, geez, if I need these retailers to keep buying from me, I need to come out with more products. So then I added bowls, I added waste bags because poop bags, you always need those. And then I added toys because people love to buy toys. I added treats that were sourced locally. And so I started getting into more consumable products, but always falling back on that mission of it needs to be upcycled, it needs to have a sustainability story to it. But for us, as we got out into the market, we learned what the market needed and wanted, and we learned what we needed to add to our product line in order to grow and stay sustainable as a business. And so it's just always adapting, taking risks, and kind of going for it, to be honest.
And with ours, we had, in our partnerships, there's a lot of green space because the materials, substrates are always different. So we do a lot of design and create a lot of different products all the time. And sometimes we just get things in where we scratch our head and say, nope, I don't even know what to do with that. Well, I guess it's lunchtime. So Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, guys.